So when we did the Superman episode of this show, I said it was the big one. Personally, this episode is bigger because this is inarguably, I can't say, probably my favorite character in the entire DC mythos. Let's talk about the ace reporter from the Daily Planet, Lois Lane. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Batmaning of. This is the show where I take the characters of the DC universe and we make a Batman-esque style movie for them. We'll do Batman eventually, I think, but this week we are doing, like I said at the top of the show, arguably the best part of the DC universe in my opinion. When I started coming up with the concept for the show, one of the things I said to myself was, you're gonna do Lois Lane. You have to do Lois Lane. You have so many thoughts and feelings about this character. If you don't do Lois Lane, what are you even doing with yourself? Because here's the thing. She can fit into her own solo film perfectly, and she could be a great supporting role for a lot of DC films. Fact of the matter is, we never had one that's just standalone her. We've come close a couple of times where things are more her story, but she's always the love interest, and that's not a problem. Something I want to make abundantly clear about my pitch and everything we're going to be talking about in this episode is Lois Lane should be connected to Superman. She is somebody who is the integral part of his world. She is the realism to his optimism. She brings him down like, you can't say those things. You shouldn't behave that way. You are an optimistic, bright-eyed kid who has his heart in the right direction, his head in the clouds of what the world should be. She's there to tell him, that's great, but that's not where we are right now. You have to strive for something more realistic. You have to appease the masses in a way that makes them understand who you are without telling them who you are. She is essentially the mom, I say mom loosely, of the DCU, one of the first female characters to actually have her own head in the clouds and have her footing in reality. I love that about her. She is there from the conception. She's one of the early creations connected to the Superman mythos, one of its most important parts. And I just love the idea that she is this ace reporter, this journalist for one of the best newspaper in the world, because that just embodies a certain amount of respect from her. This kind of like, you can be terrified of her in the world, like, oh shit, Lois is here? Damn, she's going to either ruin your life or save it in ways that you don't understand. Maybe it's from my writing background and my obsession with journalism and that kind of stuff. I did study journalism for a bit. I love that kind of stuff and that energy. And Lois is, in my opinion, one of the best representations of that in comic books, where she is just confident, headstrong, sure of herself, and more often than not, she is right. She's in the right. She understands the world on a realistic level. And it makes for such great storytelling where you can play her. Again, we've talked about this with a lot of other characters. You can play Lois Lane in a multitude of chameleon roles. If you want to make a story that's kind of silly, funny, and lighthearted, she can have the one-liner and quip you over there. If you want to make an intense political thriller, she's a great lead for that, going undercover and learning certain things. You want to have a standard superhero story, she's the damsel in distress who is confident enough in herself to understand she is going to be saved and that she can do things by herself. That is a key fundamental. Unlike other people in the damsel in distress role, Lois is comfortable being saved, and she is like, well, if I'm not saved, I can get myself out of the situation. She's kind of the template for that in some contemporary comics. This woman who is like, Superman will save me, but if he doesn't get here in time, I guess I'll jimmy my way out of this situation and save the day my own. That is an important part of her character. Comes from her upbringing, army brat kid coming up on her own, being a journalist, coming into that world, and just being like, I like this guy. She doesn't hate Superman. There's no conflict with that. She's like, this guy's interesting. I like this world. I like what I do. She's comfortable in every situation. It's awesome. She is just the best and the funnest and the most creative, and you can do so much with that character, so many worlds to explore, so many character moments you could portray and have so much fun with. And when you're coming up with a story for that, this is the one. I don't talk about it a lot. This is the character I want to write more than anybody in the DC mythos. I would love to do a Lois Lane story. I'd love to make a Lois Lane movie. One of my personal pitches that I don't really talk about is I want to do a His Girl Friday style story, but at the Daily Planet. That is the one film I'd want to make in the DC universe, because Lois Lane is a Howard Hawks level character. She's got the same energy. She can quip with the big boys. She can fight them away. She's still attractive and comfortable in her sexuality, where she knows what she's doing. She has that kind of classic energy of that type of girl from that time, like a Katharine Hepburn type. Just snarky with the dudes, confident enough to be like, you want to hit on me? Go for it, but I'm not going to do anything with you. It is great. And I guess maybe just being in that time period and that energy is something I've always connected to and I've liked in my media. And maybe that's why I've always connected to this character, because she has that timeless feel of just any Superman story of any time period a Lois Lane character can work, whether it's the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and onwards, whether it's any interpretation in live action or in cartoons. The Lois Lane character is one of the most important aspects of this world. She gives him his levity, she gives him the realism, she gives him a certain level of optimism, of romance. When you see that relationship played out perfectly, it's the best romance in comic books, because it's, you know, her giving him realism and him giving her optimism. It's the two coming together to realize maybe there is a better tomorrow, but we have to approach it a certain way. Beautiful levels of storytelling. Get as intense as you want, get as dark as you want. Lois Lane is there with a joke, with something to say that is going to shine light in the right direction. The best journalist, the best reporter, one of the top, smart, clever, funny characters in all of DC Comics. And my favorite character of the bunch. I've always been a Superman guy. Of recently, I should say, not always Superman, but Lois Lane is kind of one of the key reasons Superman has always worked for me. Just a comfortable character who can do whatever she wants, and it works fine. So every time I read a Superman story, it starts with Lois Lane being the character I love. And I just always like, there's been certain interpretations where I'm like, this is bad. But this is the key thing too. When we're going to talk about like the past iterations and previous actresses that play Lois Lane, the one thing we're going to get very clear right away, a lot of them are great. There are few bad Lois Lanes. Maybe one or maybe two that are like, who cares? None of them are terrible. You kind of got to start, like I talked about with the Superman stuff, with the serial girls like Noel Neal and Phyllis Coates, like those classic Superman characters from the old serials. They are fine. Again, it's the 40s. It doesn't matter. That character is presented in a certain way, so it doesn't really matter. But then you come to Superman the movie, you get Margot Kidder, and you just change the game of what this character can be. The key thing to Lois Lane, there's actually two things. One, you need to have the right energy of just confident, smart, and frantic. A Lois Lane character should just be like one of the smartest people in the room, maybe not the strongest, but she's just there, like she's never uncomfortable in the room. She's comfortable in every situation she's in, and you just have to have that right energy, that malice to it. And that's why when you get that casting wrong, it seriously affects you. But Kidder was just perfect at it. She was so strong and comfortable and confident and beautiful. She was great. Terry Hatcher, again, not as strong as Kidder, but just good at it. Very good at it, you know? And then you have people like Kate Bosworth, who did it for Superman Returns, which is not a great sample sizing to get anything done right. She was just mediocre. Then, of course, with Smallville, you have, I think, Season 4 becomes the introduction of Erica Durance as Lois Lane, and getting really close to the Kidder energy again. I'd say she's the third best Lois Lane. We'll get to the other one later, but Kidder's the template. She makes it work. She's the reason all of this is powerful and interesting and fun and creative. And then Durance is like, I'm going to do that in a modern setting with a younger woman, and you're going to love it, and it's going to work perfectly. You're going to be comfortable with me. It's very fun. It's very cool. We're all having a good time. Then, of course, you have the reboot with Amy Adams, who, like I said about Cavill, he looks the part, is a bad Superman. This is a bad Lois Lane. Amy Adams, on paper, could play the role, but she is fundamentally not the right aesthetic for that character. She just looks like she is too happy, if that makes sense. Lois Lane is a happy character, but the smirk also is like, this is not a great situation I'm in, but I'm not going to let you have the benefit of being better than me. And I don't know if Adams pulled that off perfectly. I think later on in like things like Justice League, it's way worse. But then you get who you could argue, and I would argue this if anybody who brings it up, the best portrayal of Lois Lane next to Kidder is Bitsy Tulloch, Elizabeth Tulloch on Superman and Lois. The perfect combination of everything I've been saying. She is a little more emotional and motherly than some of the other things here, but that's going back to what I was saying about Lois Lane being the mother of the DC universe. She's like the elder statesman of the ladies of that company. And Bitsy presents that perfectly. She can still do her work in Smallville and get everything done there. She's still the mother and the wife, getting all the responsibilities that way. The way she plays off of Tyler, top-notch stuff. She's arguably right up there with Kidder. I go back and forth on them all the time. But just like Tyler and Christopher for Superman, you can't intersperse those two. Like, those guys get it for their era, and Bitsy definitely gets it for the 2020 era. And that is how you play Lois Lane. She's great at it. She is fantastic at it. And you look at that list, not a lot of bad Loises, are there? Some that are bad, like Adams, but most of them just mediocre, if not fantastic. More great and perfect than there are stinkers. And that's kind of cool to see. So, Lois Lane. What do you do for a Lois Lane movie? What direction do you go? What story do you tell? Obviously, you have to find the key references of stuff you want it to feel like. So, I've always said Chinatown is the Batman. That's what they said. Here's my pitch. If I went to Warner Bros., they said, what do you think? What do you want this to emulate like? What do you want it to feel like? Well, like I already said, His Girl Friday, she has to have that energy in the room with the other people of the Daily Planet, where they treat her as an equal, but they see her as still like a woman in this industry, in this society. You have to do kind of newsroom, like this modern take on, oh man, politics are destroying like the narratives we tell in our journalism. That's fascinating. And hell, Succession's very successful. Why not something of that political intrigue level where it's like this is a company destroying itself from within with the people that work there? Combine that all together, you get your Lois Lane story. So here's my pitch for a Lois Lane film. I didn't want to start her off too early in the career. You don't need the origin story of like, oh, look at this young woman rising through the ranks. We get that from her in every story. People should know the name Lois Lane. Not that they fear it, but they respect it, they admire it, even if she's a little brash in her storytelling. So this is a Lois, maybe in her mid-20s. She is fresh, like a fresh-faced woman at the Daily Planet. Not too new, not too old. Kind of maybe a couple years into her stint there. She has gotten a name for herself. Her reputation precedes her. When people are like, oh, Miss Lane, Daily Planet, they go, oh, Lois, you're here to ask a question? She is brash, she is headstrong and confident and going to ask the questions not a lot of reporters are going to do. And that leads her to her latest challenge, which is connecting the tissue between the mayor of Metropolis, Lex Luthor, one of the businessmen who has worked there, been a figure in the industry for so long. Well, rumors are that he might be connected to this mysterious villain called the Toyman, maybe funding his criminal operations and sending evil toys into the world. Maybe Lois is going to have to dig up a little political destruction and figure out what's really going on there. Is she going to battle Lex in this political espionage thing? Maybe figure out how he's connected to this Toyman? Is she going to have to go to the streets of Metropolis and figure out who this Toyman is, get the dirt on him on a street level, and write the perfect story to bring down both the corrupt mayor and this villain wreaking havoc on her city? The key thing is you have to stick with the journalism thing, and you have to make it a little bit superhero, because she is a superhero in her own right. She is. She's on the same level as Superman. You have to present that in a certain way. And yes, we're not shying away from this being in Metropolis. Superman will appear in the book. Clark Kent will appear in the story. They are both active members in her world, but it's not their story. Lois Lane maybe goes on a date with Clark. Things are like, I'm distracted by this Lex story, and she's like, I have to set up a meeting with Superman to talk about his connections to all this, figure out what that is. But the key is, we're going to be fighting Lex Luthor in the courtrooms, and we're going to be fighting Toyman in the fun stuff going there. Fun narrative with a lot you can work from. So with that, who do you cast as your Lois Lane? You have to find the right actress, and more than any other one, I struggled to find the right girl to play Lois Lane. I went through a bunch of different casting options, like literally a bunch. I had older, younger, in the middle, but I think I landed on somebody I think could really pull it off, because again, you have to get the right energy for this girl. You have to get the right energy for Lois. It's so hard to capture. A lot of young actresses feel like they'd be up to the challenge. The one I'd settled on, again, kind of just like nepotism baby, but she might be really good for the role. I think other work we've seen her in makes her very suited for this kind of story. Maude Apatow. I like her in Euphoria. She's got a great energy. She's got the face, kind of like that timeless Hollywood energy where this is a young woman who feels like she could be in any time, place, and you make it work. She is smart. She is confident. She looks a lot like Lois Lane, and that was a key thing I was looking for. And I'm definitely able to hold her own in a movie. Play off against some big wigs. She could do it in spades. And with that, you have to find the right director for a project like this. Another one I kind of struggled on, but I landed on S.J. Clarkson, who has been working in television for a long time, made a numerous amount of television episodes, including Succession, including Jessica Jones. Why not have her make some big budgeted film with this political intrigue, the truth in journalism? Let's tell that story. Let's do a Lois Lane film and make it right and make it fun and make it perfect. And that is the combination you need to make a Lois Lane feature film. And if you don't get any of those, then come on, Warner Brothers, just let me make it. I could do it in a week. Well, not a week, but I'll do it anyways. Give me a month. It's yours on the table. So, thank you guys for watching this episode of the Batmaning of. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, I will check you out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And you can check me out there too. I don't know why I said it that way, but as always, have fun, stay safe, good luck. Lois Lane, perfect character. Let's make it a movie.